Hi, kids. Welcome back to Miss Nancy's Bible College for Kids. Today's lesson is entitled Two Different Boys in Two Different Stories. And it's really two sons and two sons. And I thought to myself, Jesus was a son. He was a boy. So I just want you to pattern yourself after him. None of us can do it, but just think about how Jesus must have been as a little boy. But today's lesson is in the New Testament. It's in two places. The first one is Matthew 21. So somebody grab a pen and a paper. This is Jesus talking in this story. But what think ye? A certain man had two sons, and he came to the first and said, Son, go work today in my vineyard. He answered and said, I will not. But afterward he repented and went. And he came to the second and said likewise. And he answered and said, I go, sir, and went not. Whether of them twain, that means which one of the two, did the will of his father? They say unto him, the first. Jesus saith unto them, Verily I say to you, that the publicans and harlots go into the kingdom of God before you. And then he goes ahead and tells them why. For John came unto you in the way of righteousness, and ye believed him not. But the publicans and the harlots, that's what everybody considers the really bad people. But the publicans and the harlots believed him. So they were smarter than they were. And ye, when ye had seen it, repented not afterward, that ye might believe him. So repentant means to turn away from something or do something different, or to be very sorry for. So the first son said he wouldn't go. He stubbed up, but then he went. And the second son, he said he would and didn't. That's a liar. God hates a liar, kids. Remember that. And the next story is in Luke chapter 15. And this is Jesus talking also. And he said, a certain man had two sons. Now, we've had this story before, but I've never done it in the form of two different sets of sons and the difference and the sameness. So in this part, I'm going to call it the Bible's Lost and Found. A certain man had two sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of the goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. So he didn't just give his youngest son his part, he gave both of them half and half. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country. Kids, let me tell you now, if you got good parents, don't be in any rush to leave them. They are there to support you, protect you, and help you to make good decisions. I just thought I'd throw that in there for free, and you parents don't have to thank me. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance on riotous living. And when he had spent all, he didn't have a dime left, there arose a mighty famine in that land. Remember, kids, what a famine is? No food to be had anywhere. And he began to be in want. Where was his friends then? Have you ever had money and people hung around you? Then when your money's gone, they don't? Well, this happens to this young man. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country. And he sent him into the field to feed swine. Now, these people, they're not even supposed to eat swine, let alone being around them. And then to hear what this young man says he's going to do. And he would have fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. So he was going to pretend like if he saw somebody coming, he was going to eat them corn husks. Now, them big old fat juicy ears of corn is one thing. But them old dry leafy husk, that's another. But he was going to act like he was going to eat them, see if anybody had mercy. But they didn't. And when he came to himself, he didn't have his mind right to this point. He said, How many hired servants of my father's house have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? Now he's starting to think straight when it just comes down to what you really need. He thought this, and he said to himself, I will arise and go to my father. He even planned out exactly what he was going to say the whole way there. He might have said it 10 times or 30 times, I don't know. I will arise and go to my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. Now, thee, I heard a man this week say he didn't know what these and thous meant. Thee means he's talking to his dad and he's pointing right at him. You, it's you. And am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. Just like any good father is. If they have a wayward son, they're always waiting, watching, and probably praying so much that that son would return home. But anyway, the father ran and kissed him and fell on his neck and kissed him. And so the son's ready to give his speech that he'd practiced probably numerous times. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven. Remember, he was going to say that. And in thy sight, going to say that. And am no more worthy to be called thy son. He had planned on saying a little bit more, make me as one of your servants, but the father had heard enough. And here's what the father did. But the father said to his servants, Bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring hither the fatted calf, it's like an afterthought, and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. And then he says, why? For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they begin to be merry. Well, there's the dad. There's the youngest son. Now let's see who else is part of this picture. Now his elder son was in the field. And as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. This is still Jesus talking. And he said unto him, Thy brother is come home, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. You'd think that older brother would run in and hug his neck and say, Brother, where you been? How are you? And all that. Let's go on and see. And he was angry. So this man had 2 sons, one left. But then he learned his lesson, come back and was sorry. Here comes the older brother. He was angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. He was saying, Son, come on now. And here's what he was saying. And he answered and said to his father, this is the oldest son talking, but Jesus saying it, Lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid. Remember, he gave him half of what he had, so he just wasn't thinking straight. That I might make merry with my friends. Well, he owned it. He could have got a calf and killed it and had a party. He just wasn't thinking. There's always somebody else to blame when you're not in the right. But as soon as this thy son was come, which hath devoured thy living with harlots, thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. And he said to him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Thine means yours. It was meet. He's saying, we should have done this. Why? It was meet that we should make merry and be glad. Then he tells him the reason. For this thy brother was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Which one of these sons in each story would you rather be? Which boy in the first story? Which one in the second? Let's go ahead and ask the questions. Hope you guys know all the answers. How many sons did each of the dads have? 2. What did the father want the boys to do in the first story? He said, Son, go work in my vineyard. What did the first son say? I will not. But then what happened? He felt sorry. He felt bad for the way he talked to his dad. So he repented and did it. But when the dad told the second son, what did he say and do? He said, I go, Father. But he went not. And then, what was it that Jesus said about the publicans and the harlots? He said, they'll go in before you guys, because when they heard it, they believed John. You didn't. And so, I'd rather be this son in this story than any of those bigwigs there. And they was religious people, some of them. But they didn't understand. They didn't get it. Okay, so in the second story, what was the title I gave it? The Bible's Lost and Found. And we've already said he had two sons. What did the youngest son ask the dad? He said, divide to me your living, Dad. In other words, man, he didn't even wait till he died. He said, give me whatever you got for me now. So what did the dad do? He did it, didn't he? And then not many days after that, what did that youngest son do? He went to the far country, didn't he? And what did he do there? He spent all that he had on riotous living. That means he thought he was living it up. But then one day, the money ran out. The friends were gone. And there became a bad situation in that land. What was it? There was a famine, wasn't there? So what did the young son do? He went and joined himself to a citizen of that far country. Guys, don't ever go out into the world to find what you think you need. It's all waiting right at your house and right where the Father is. So I just threw that in there. But anyway, guys, so then he went to that citizen, and what did that citizen have this young man to do? He went to slop the hogs. This country talk for feeding the pigs. But anyway, what did he pretend like he was going to do if he saw somebody coming? He pretended like he was going to eat what them old nasty, stinky hogs was going to eat, didn't he? But then one day, what happened? He came to himself. What did he think? He said, at my father's house, the servants there have more than enough, and they could spare some. So he said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. What did he do? He headed back to the Father, didn't he? But what did he do all the way there? Maybe. This is just Miss Nancy's imagination kicking in. He practiced that speech. What was that speech? I've sinned against you and I've sinned against heaven. I know I'm not worthy to be your son, but what? Make me as one of your hired servants. So he went towards the Father's house, but before he could even get close, what happened? The dad was standing there at the door, or maybe the window, looking for him way down the road. I thought about this. I thought if that boy, or if these boys had a mom, I bet he was saying, look, honey, don't that look like, our youngest son walking? But anyway, that imagination again, that's just thinking how it might have been. But I know that the Father was standing there watching and waiting. And what did he do? He sent a servant out to get him, didn't he? And what did he tell that servant to do? He said, put a robe on him, put a ring on him, put shoes on his feet, and something else. What did he say? He said, go kill what? The fatted calf. And then what did they start to do? They were having a feast, weren't they? Now, where was the oldest son at this time? He was out in the field. That's a good boy, especially though the dad had already gave him the farm or whatever it was, so he was out working it. There's nothing wrong with that. So him staying at home, that was good. That part of it was good. But anyway, when they began to make merry, the son came, and what did he ask the servant? He said, what is going on? I hear music, I hear dancing, what's happening? And the servant probably looked excitedly at him and said, your brother come home, and your dad told us to kill a fatted calf, and so we're having a party. How did that make the oldest brother feel? He was not happy. He was angry. What wouldn't he do? He would not go in. So what happened? The father came out, didn't he? And he said, son, what's wrong? And then he went through telling what had happened. This son of mine, he was gone, he was dead, now he's alive. He was lost, now he's found. So, we have a reason. But what did the older son say to his dad? You never gave me a fatted calf. that I could throw a party and invite my friends? Does it record that he ever said, "Oh, Dad, come on, let's go. We'll enjoy this together"? No. Which son would you rather be in this story? All I'm saying, boys, since this is boys and boys, be the best son you can be. One of these days, you'll never regret it. And your dad will be so proud. So will your mom. But I want all you kids to think we are God's children once we're born again. Be the best son or daughter that you can be. Because if you do right, you're laying up treasure in heaven. And you'll know one of these days it was worth it all. See you next time. Bye, kids.